Some crimes are shocking because of their brutality. Others are disturbing because of how calculated they are. But every once in a while, there's a case so psychologically unsettling that even seasoned investigators struggle to understand it. This is one of those cases. This is the story of a man who murdered his grandparents as a teenager, manipulated doctors into releasing him, became one of America's most infamous serial killers, and ultimately committed the act he believed would finally fix him the murder of his own mother. This is the horrifying true story of Edmund Kemper. Edmund Emil Kemper III was born into a deeply dysfunctional family. From a very young age, Edmund displayed troubling behavior, but according to him, the root of everything traced back to one person. His mother. Edmund didn't just dislike his mother, he despised her. She was verbally abusive, emotionally cruel, and relentlessly demeaning. She told him he was worthless, that he would never succeed, that no woman could ever love him, and over time those words began to fester inside him. Because of ongoing conflicts, Edmund didn't live with his mother during his teenage years. Instead, he was sent to live with his grandparents on a remote ranch in rural California. Out there, isolated from the rest of the world, Edmund's anger quietly grew. In 1964, when Edmund was just 15 years old, something inside him finally snapped. One day, while sitting in the kitchen with his grandmother, an argument broke out. No one knows exactly what was said, but whatever it was triggered something dark in Edmund's mind. In that moment, he stopped seeing his grandmother as his grandmother. He saw her as his mother, as someone trying to control him. And he decided he would not allow it. Edmund walked away, retrieved a rifle, returned to the kitchen, and shot his grandmother multiple times. To make sure she was dead, he then grabbed a knife and stabbed her. Moments later, Edmund realized his grandfather was on his way home. Not wanting his grandfather to see the body, Edmund waited outside. As his grandfather pulled into the driveway, Edmund shot him as well, killing him instantly. At 15 years old, Edmund Kemper had murdered both of his grandparents. After the murders, Edmund did something unexpected. He called his mother and told her everything. She instructed him to call the police and turn himself in, which he did. Edmund was arrested and photographed. His mugshot showed a massive teenager with an eerie calmness behind his eyes. Psychiatrists quickly deemed him mentally unstable, and instead of prison, Edmund was sent to a state psychiatric hospital for criminally insane offenders. But here's where things went terribly wrong. Edmund Kemper was highly intelligent, genius-level intelligent, and he quickly realized something important. The doctors weren't nearly as smart as he was. Inside the psychiatric hospital, Edmund began playing the long game. He memorized psychological evaluations, learned exactly what doctors wanted to hear, adjusted his behavior perfectly. He presented himself as calm, cooperative, and rehabilitated. Over the course of 6 years, he convinced mental health professionals that he was no longer dangerous. Astonishingly, the state agreed. In a move that would later be seen as catastrophic, Edmund Kemper was released at age 21. Even worse, his juvenile murder record was expunged, meaning no one could legally know he had murdered his grandparents. Edmund Kemper walked back into society with a clean slate. After his release, Edmund moved back in with the very person he blamed for his misery, his mother. The abuse continued. She mocked him daily, belittled him constantly, reminded him he was a failure. Despite this, Edmund attempted to live a normal life. He applied to become a California Highway Patrol officer, but was rejected due to his massive size. At 6'9" and over 300 pounds, it simply didn't meet the requirements. Soon after, he was hit by a car and suffered serious injuries that prevented him from working. Once again, Edmund found himself unemployed, humiliated, and trapped living with the woman he hated most. In 1972, Edmund felt the urge return. This time, he didn't fight it. Instead, he acted. Edmund had a habit of picking up hitchhikers, mostly young women. It was common at the time, and no one suspected the quiet giant behind the wheel. One day, he picked up 2 college students. Instead of taking them to their destination, Edmund drove them to a secluded area. He handcuffed them martyred temp, then took their bodies home. This would become his pattern. Whenever his mother humiliated him, Edmund went hunting. Over the next several months, Edmund murdered multiple young women, stabbing some, shooting others, and disposing of their bodies across California. He wasn't killing randomly. In his mind, each victim represented his mother. With each murder, Edmund grew bolder. He began bringing victims back to his mother's house while she was away. The symbolism was deeply disturbing. In one instance, he buried a victim's severed head in his mother's garden. Law enforcement had no idea they were hunting a man who had already murdered twice and been released. In 1973, Edmund's mother came home drunk late one night and made one final dismissive comment toward him. Something clicked. Edmund realized he had been killing the wrong people. The true source of his rage had been in front of him the entire time. That night, after she fell asleep, Edmund entered her room with a hammer. He struck her, killed her, then decapitated her. He placed her head on a shelf in his room and screamed at it for over an hour, finally saying everything he had been holding inside for years. He even threw darts at her head. After killing his mother, Edmund invited one of her friends over. When she arrived, he murdered her as well. Then he fled the state. As Edmund drove across the country, something unexpected happened. His urge to kill disappeared. For the first time, he felt relieved. Overcome with guilt, Edmund pulled over at a payphone and called police, confessing to everything. Law enforcement initially thought it was a prank. It wasn't. Edmund Kemper was arrested, tried, and convicted of 8 murders. He was sentenced to life in prison. Today, Edmund Kemper remains aging and studied as one of the most psychologically complex serial killers in American history. The most terrifying part of this case isn't the violence. It's the fact that the system had him and let him go. This has been Crime Line.